Hello, welcome to the City Club of Cleveland today for the first youth forum of the 2014-2015 school year. Our forum today is all about innovation and entrepreneurship. We have three speakers. Our first speaker is Dan Moore. He's a local Cleveland graduate of University School. He currently owns 41 different businesses, including the Cleveland Metro Parks, the Cleveland Clinic Foundation, Park Ohio Incorporated, Leadership Cleveland, and he is the trustee of the Harvard Business Club. Our second speaker is Lavora Perry. She founded and is currently the publisher and editor of the East Cleveland Narrative. Our third speaker is Morris Wheeler, who resides in Shaker Heights, Ohio. He is the founder and owner of Drummond Road Capital, which is a venture capitalist that has a venture capital firm that has been recognized as one of the top 100 most active startup investors in the United States. Our moderator for this discussion will be Nick Rutherford from Walsh Jesuit, and I hope that you all enjoy the discussion. Thank you.
As Dom said, my name is Nick Rutherford. I'm the chair of the Youth Council this year at the City Club. And we've got three speakers here. We've got Dan Moore, Morris Wheeler, and Lavora Perry. And Dan does not own the Cleveland Metro Parks, if you're all wondering. But he is on the board of that and Park Ohio. But they know a lot more about entrepreneurship than I do. So we're going to start this forum today with my first question, which is just to explain to us what triggered you guys into entrepreneurship. What really brought you down the path that you guys are now on?
Who would you like to field?
Oh, whoever wants. Do you want to start, Mr. Moore?
Sure. I think the path to entrepreneurship starts when you're very young, and I think a lemonade stand is a good example. A paper route is a good example, but I think you sort of have to be involved in self-initiated projects at a young age. And I think, like when I had a tree service in college, cutting trees down, and I had a birthday cake service, and all sorts of stuff like that. So I think the first thing is you've got to start young, I think. And I think the second thing is you may have to be philosophically and psychologically prepared for it. I think some people are built in to be entrepreneurs. Their parents were entrepreneurs, or they were immigrants, and so the world was a little bit topsy-turvy, and it was easy for them to adapt. So I'd say getting started, it's your philosophical background and getting started early. That would be my.
Well, I agree with Dan. Your question was what made me?
Just what brought you into entrepreneurship? What really kind of triggered that switch that you wanted, made you realize what you want to do?
Well, I think without realizing it was how I was brought up. My dad was from the South, from the Jim Crow South, and he's 91 years old now, still living. But he came to the North to get out of the discrimination that he faced there, which he described as making him feel as if he wasn't a man. So he started his own business because his brothers had started a business in trucking. I grew up with Rudy's Trucking as just part of our family. My mom was a homemaker, but my dad always ran his own business. When he finally got out of trucking, I don't know how many years he'd been doing it, because I grew up with him doing that. It was sometime in the 80s. He bought a van. He got out of trucking because he got in a bad accident, and he said, "This is a sign that I need to quit." His truck actually flipped completely over, and he was able to survive that. And he bought a van, and he said, "Somehow I'm going to have money through doing this." And he found a way to turn that into an income until he retired. So I think that influenced me. My first job, with various jobs, I wasn't an entrepreneur at all. I worked for employers, but I wanted to be an actor. And acting, going out and getting gigs like that, that's a form of entrepreneurship because you have to find your own work. So I think the answer to that would be my family influence, and then what I was passionate about. I was passionate about the theater, so I pursued that. Many years up the road, I stumbled into my other passion, which was writing, and I continued to do that and started my own business, but that's another story. But I think I would say definitely my family influence and definitely following my heart, my own passions is what led me into entrepreneurship.
What led me into entrepreneurship was three simple things. When I was a senior in high school, I really loved skateboarding. I didn't have money to buy skateboards and skateboard equipment, and nobody made the skateboard I wanted anyway. So with two friends, we started a company making the kind of skateboards that we wanted to buy. And I think what I would share the most with you guys, in addition to what Dan and Lavora have already said, is trust yourself. If you love something and you know something, go with it and be confident that other people are going to love the same thing too.
So we talked about where you guys began. Can you tell us a little about where you are now? What exactly you do? I know that you're in writing, you own many companies, and you're in startups. Just what draws you to that field?
I publish a paper, and I have an extensive background in writing. The first career path that led me to writing as a form of making money was working for American Greetings. I was their first African American staff writer, and I did that for 7 years. I won a couple of awards. I quit to become an entrepreneur. I really wanted to write a novel, a children's book, because the idea I had, there was no book like that particular type of book. It was about a black Buddhist child living in the urban community. And I couldn't really do that and work at my job at the same time because the job was the job. So, and I also really wanted to be out of that. I really wanted to have my own business and not be bound by somebody else's infrastructure. So I started a publishing company. I published my own books. I since got published by other publisher out of Massachusetts, another one out of Pennsylvania. And I started The Narrator back in May of this year, so it's still a very new paper under my company, which is Forest Hill Publishing, really, again, out of my passion. I think that's really the core to any endeavor, whether you're an entrepreneur or you do some other work, is that you really have to love it. And I love East Cleveland, and I felt that the mainstream media was portraying us in an imbalanced way, because we were constantly portrayed negatively. And although, like every place else, we had our negative aspects, that wasn't all that we were. So I decided, I remember just thinking, or saying it out loud, they're never gonna do any different. Because I wrote letters to the editor, I complained, I wrote emails. They're not gonna stop. The only way that I'm gonna get out a different story, or more balanced story about the city, is if I do my own newspaper. And that's how it got started.
I have actually 19 companies, not 42, as was introduced. But thank you. And I think what I like about it is I like being my own boss. I like being able to be involved in newness, being low down on the learning curve, and at a high level of learning. And the businesses are very different from each other, and I like that. I like to be able to take a 2-month vacation and not worry about it. So what an entrepreneur does is he doesn't bill his time. He generates income off of his idea, off of their ideas. I shouldn't say his ideas. Excuse me. Right now, I've got 4 startups going on. One is a green roof project, which Tori McMillan, wave your hand, Tori, if you're embarrassed, has been helping me with. Another one is a way to recycle Coke bottles, making them into mats that we make into automobile parts. Another one is a natural gas compressor that you can put in your garage, and it's a home refueling appliance, which allows you to run your car on fuel that costs 50 cents a gallon gasoline equivalent. That was 50 cents instead of $3. And then the fourth one is a new way to make a brake. It's a brake made out of a composite of a ceramic, and it saves 40 pounds on a Ford automobile. So those are the 4 things that I'm most interested in now. But I think that the entrepreneur life is an interesting life, and I think it makes business much more exciting. I mean, there's something new going on all the time, and yet I can turn it off if I want. I can leave town, and it runs by itself because they're already running. These companies are running, and they're up and going.
Well, he can do that because he has 41 companies.
No,
I don't get to turn it off.
27.
19.
Got a lot of numbers thrown around, yeah.
So I would say I am where I am today for a couple of reasons. Number one, I made a decision when I was very young that I wanted to put together the skill set that I needed to succeed. So I started thinking about what that was, and it turns out, for me at least, one of the most important things was having the ability to choose from various options. If you can set yourself up so that you know where you want to be and have the skill set, when luck comes knocking, you can take advantage of the luck. And I think that's one of the more important things about where I am today. So, I ended up going to law school because I thought knowing the underpinnings of the legal system and a business would be important to me being able to be a business person someday. I never expected to be a lawyer. I ended up running a startup, one of the first internet music distribution companies back in the 90s, because I loved technology, because I loved music and I loved the music industry, and because I thought that was a great opportunity, but also would give me a skill set that I could use later if I didn't end up doing it for a long time. After that, I ended up running a public company that had nothing to do with technology. It was an industrial company, because I thought that understanding the way the public markets worked and understanding the way an industrial company worked would be important to what I wanted to do long term. And now that I've been able to be lucky and had the opportunity to sell a couple of companies that I've built, I decided that I was going to take advantage of one of the things that made me unique, which is my ADHD, and that I would work with many different startups all at once rather than trying to focus on just one, because I get bored easily. And if I work with a lot of different companies, it gives me the most different types of opportunities and options.
We're like this.
It helps. It sounds like it helps to be dyslexic. I'm dyslexic as well.
Bipolar.
There you go. Go with what makes you unique.
But I think there's one way to. I think one thing I'd like to elaborate on the point that Morris made, and that is that you have to be able to be looking at a lot of things. The old expression is, you have to kiss a lot of frogs to meet a prince, and I think that very much applies to entrepreneurship. And one thing I have done for most of my career is I've tried to keep a Pareto list, a list of companies or ideas prioritized. So I always have something to look at to say, well, now should I be doing that instead of this, or should I be doing this instead of that, and being able to pick and choose what looks the best at the time.
So these are the ways that we know you through your successes, what you guys are doing now. But can you talk on a hindrance or an obstacle, a failure that you guys had to overcome that really influenced you to be where you are today?
That would take all day for us to
Yeah.
Well,
Just one specific point.
I'll jump in for a second. I'll say one of the things I tell the entrepreneurs that I work with is that one of the reasons they should want to work with me is because I've made pretty much every mistake that can be made at some point in my life, and I've learned from it. And I'm hopeful that I can, through the mistakes that I've made, help them learn something so that they don't have to make the same mistakes, or at least help them learn that you have to make mistakes to be a success. I think I can't remember who had the quote, but somebody said the key to success is failing gracefully and moving on to the next step. And one of the failures that I can share is a bunch of local investors made an investment in a company that was a crowdfunding company. And it turns out that there were some people involved with the company that, shall we say, had a aversion to regulators in the state. And that didn't work out well for them. And it didn't work out well for the investors in that company either. And kind of the moral of the story is, if you're going to be working with somebody else, and you're going to be working with somebody else, because building a company and being an entrepreneur is very hard, you have to have other people working with you. Know who you're working with and know that you can trust them.
I think the issue of how many times you fail is an interesting one. And the rule I try to have is I invest a certain amount of time and money in a project, and I like it to be about 1/10 of what I could make off of it. And then I like to bring the curtain down if I haven't been able to do that. But one example that, when you're doing a lot of different things, you're not very smart about these things, and other people know a lot more about it than you do. And one example was a company I started called Perfect Impression, and I formed a patent I got a patent on a shoe that you would press down in it, and with your foot, you'd walk around in it, and it would form a perfect impression of your foot, and it would freeze. It would be like stepping in sand. And all was well, and we decided to do this over using television. And so I had a fancy campaign to how to make the TV commercial, and then I bought the television time in what I thought was appropriate. And after spending $50,000, I sold 5 pairs of shoes. So that was a bad one. But but at least I only spent $50,000. Later there came to be worse mistakes.
Well, I don't know. There's just a lot of them. But one thing that I thought of when I left my company, American Greetings, like I said, I started my own publishing company, and I published a book. And I really put a lot of energy into learning how to do that, learning how to publish. And then I kind of hit a wall because I felt like there was, I wanted to get a contract. I wanted another publisher to publish my book, because in the publishing world, at least at that time, self-publishing wasn't considered legit. So I realized that there were things I didn't know. So I had to go back and really determine to become a really good writer. Or I should say better than I was at that point. And so that was one setback. And then as a result of being around other authors, I don't know if you've read books by Jerry Spinelli or Donna Jo Napoli, I was able to go to conferences and really learn from people who I really admired as children's book authors. And I did land that contract. So I was able to turn that adversity around of really feeling like I can't do this to doing it. And what that did for me is give me confidence that not only was I okay as a writer, but I could continue, whatever the obstacle was, I could continue to overcome it. So another thing I thought of is when I left American Greetings, I took my 401k with me. And if you know anything about that, that was my retirement. I took all of that money, and I lost part of it, because if you withdraw it early, you lose part of it. And so I had no retirement. And for a long time, I felt like, boy, that was just so stupid. Why did you quit your job? And you start this business, et cetera, et cetera. And then the financial crisis hit. And a lot of people lost their retirements. And I was telling someone about what I did and how I really had kind of regretted it, even though I didn't want to be at the company. I regretted taking all that money. And she said, but at least you got to spend it. A lot of people didn't. And so I was like, oh, that wasn't so bad after all. So.
We talked a little bit earlier about what brought you all into entrepreneurship. How do you see that progressing as kids such as us join the workforce? How do you see it? How do you see it different as to when you were joining the workforce?
Well, I think that when we were joining the workforce, I think it was a little easier to come up with an idea, a little easier than it is now. And I think part of that is because so many of us now, we go to college and we have sort of a route way to go. And I'm not sure that a lot of people, well, let me state this another way. I think the best way for someone in your position to become an entrepreneur is to get into a job where you can see a lot of needs, of unmet needs, of opportunities. To me, it is much more difficult to find the good idea or the need than it is to find the solution for the need. And I think there are many little niches now. So it's easy, I think, to get into a business if you know something and you're in a position where you can find needs. The deals that come to me from young people that are generally just out of college is the ideas aren't very good. In other words, they're not in a position where they can really identify unmet needs. And Morris and I are going to disagree on this a little bit, but I think, and I welcome your comments, Morris. I know they'll be poignant. But I think so. So I think then you really got to look at it. If you're going to start something on your own, you've got to start something that you can scale properly. It's got to be small. It's got to be something that is needed so badly that you don't have any trouble financing stuff. Like, let me give you a great example. One of my first businesses was a pickup truck problem that General Motors Chevrolet division had. And they had the pickup truck where your feet are in the driver's position would wear through, and salt would wear through the floor. And there was a little section that went up to the front of where the engine is. And if the exhaust pipe wore out or corroded out, exhaust fumes would come right up into the car and kill the driver. And so General Motors was really interested in solving this problem. Now, so I call that an unmet need. And so I solved the problem, which is very easy to solve, and presented it to General Motors. The engineers loved it. They said, you have the contract. But I had to talk to the purchasing people. And the purchasing people wanted to come and see the factory. Well, there was no factory. This was something I had in my mind. But I had a building, and I chalked out where these machines were going to be that was going to build this thing. And I had one of the machines over in the corner that was just getting put together. And the purchasing guy came down, and he was astounded at how little was there. He said, well, I can't give you this contract. I mean, this is critical to General Motors. If it doesn't work out right, we could kill people. And I can't give it to a guy who's just got a bunch of chalk on the floor. And I said, oh, well, wait, there's more to this. And there was a door in the back of the plant that led into the next guy's factory. It wasn't my factory. So I took him, opened the door and took him through the factory and was waving at people, and they were puzzled because they hadn't seen me before. And so we went through it, and everyone was just delighted with how big this thing was, and I was able to do it. I don't think you could do that today. I think today people would want to see they'd want to see your quality control reports and the fact that you have to meet all these crazy standards. So I think that's a little bit higher hurdle for the new crew in the room here.
I guess I'm going to disagree with Dan on two counts. Number one, I don't think there has ever been more opportunity open to more people to be entrepreneurs than today. When we started our company back in 1995, we had an amazing idea. We were going to distribute music on the internet. Nobody else had done that before. Nobody else had thought of it. And we had to raise $5 million to get started because we needed servers, we needed software, we needed development. When we started our company, the first things we bought was a giant, the size of 2 refrigerators, storage array that held 1 whole terabyte of data. It cost us $900,000 for that one piece of equipment alone. Pretty much all of you I'm guessing, have a computer somewhere or 1 or 2 computers that has half a terabyte or a terabyte. You could buy that now for $100. Everything that we spent over $3 million starting our company on in 1994, you could get from Amazon for $30 a month with the hosting service today. You could do the development work yourself because you got much higher level development programs to do. And if you didn't have the money to do it yourself and it was a worthy idea and you could get enough people to follow you, you could raise the money on Kickstarter in a couple of months. So I think in terms of opportunity, there's never been more opportunity open to more people than there has been, than there is today. The second point is, I really think we had the greatest idea in the world. In essence, we were Spotify before there was a Spotify. But execution is what it's all about. And we did an okay job of execution, but we kind of forgot one thing. In 1994, the average person was connecting to the internet by dialing up a phone and putting the phone inside a little rubber compartment that went and connected at a slower speed than your phone connects today. It wasn't the best way to distribute music. And we won Webbies and we did a lot of things right, but ultimately we were too early and our execution was wrong. We ended up turning it into a success. We got lucky. We sold it before the internet crash of 2000. But in my view, it's not about the idea. The idea is important. It's about the execution. It's about getting it right once you've figured out what idea to pursue. And these days, there is so much learning out there on what's called the lean startup and how to, with very little money and short periods of time, to develop an idea into something that is fundable, that I don't think there's ever been more opportunity than there is today.
Can I have a little moment of rebuttal here? I think the issue of opportunity out there, I think Morris is dead on. I mean, there's every single person in this room could be starting a business within maybe 6 months if you had the idea. So the idea, I still think, is king. Now, my experience from having people come and talk to me, and having started so many companies, I get a couple of people that come in every week and talk about their idea. And almost always, the idea is so bad that you don't even want to talk about it. I mean, some of these ideas, these are smart people. They've gone to good schools. They've had experience. Some of them work for big companies. And why someone would think that they could start a company with that idea? I mean, because it's not an unmet need. There are other people that compete more easily. So there are simple things that if they had gone down and talked to their friends, pick any 10 friends and told them the idea, they would have said the same thing that I said, that I would have told them. But I think the issue more is you've got to get that idea. Now coming from the software field, as Morris has, is a little bit different than mine is more industrial and product. I mean, we make things. So I think that when you're making things, I think you have to know exactly what you're going to make. And I would say that if you can't completely identify the unmet need, you shouldn't do it.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you again. Let's take the example of an idea that somebody had. Their idea was, I'm going to make an app where people can put in their current location and have anybody come pick them up and give them a ride somewhere like a taxi would. The smartest investors in the country looked at that and said, are you out of your mind? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Because they'd never heard of anything like that. They executed the heck out of it, and today that's a billion-dollar company called Uber. Now, I will agree with you on one point, and that is you can execute the heck out of a bad idea and not have a success. So I'm not going to say the idea is irrelevant. It's not.
My argument would be that the Uber idea is a great idea because there's a sort of a monopolistic taxi cab business. So I would call that a good idea, and I'd say they executed it fairly well. Now, how about the next guy and the next guy and the next guy that execute that same idea? That's not an unmet need anymore.
Well, but actually the first company that did it was called Black Car. They were in business for a year or two before Uber ever came around, and they did a lousy job of execution, and they're playing catch up today.
But there are a lot of those. Like take GoPro, for example, the camera. GoPro is not the best camera, and it's not the first camera, but it's been executed the best way, and that was going to happen. Anyone in this room could have thought of the idea of having a camera that will record things more or less simultaneously. The information was there in China. You could have bought it off the shelf, but we didn't execute that idea. Someone else did. So there are a ton of ideas out there, and you've got to understand what the unmet need is.
Nick, can you repeat the question?
We could go back all day on this, but Ms. Perry, if you just want to speak on it a little bit,
Just repeat it so I can. So I got into execution and.
I forgot exactly where I was. That was.
It had to do with today's youth.
Yeah, it just had to do on today's youth, where high school students such as us will be joining the workforce within the next couple of years or after college. Mm-hmm. How do you see it differently than when you were joining the workforce? What kind of advice do you have as you see the market progress, as you see the economy progress, as you see the U.S. progressed just through innovation and entrepreneurship. Where do you see that now?
Well, first, I want to tie into what they both said. What I see them saying, coming from an artistic point of view, because first of all, I'm an artist. I'm putting out a paper, which is journalism, and some say journalism and art are two different things, but I'm an artist at heart. And to me, they sound like creators. To me, your imagination is key. Whether you call it a goal or what, I always say you start with out there, what it is you want to achieve. In my case, I wanted a paper representing our city. And beyond that, I want this to be sustainable beyond my lifetime. So I'm already thinking, how does this stay? Whether we're East Cleveland or something else, whether we become regionalized, maybe we won't even be called East Cleveland anymore, because hopefully, you know, we'll kind of all join in Northeast Ohio as one regional entity. But how do I sustain this paper throughout, you know, into the future? So I'm looking that way. And then I start figuring out how to get there. And that is my strategy as an entrepreneur and for everything. So I don't know if I call that execution or the, you know, the idea, but I'm very goal-oriented that way. So that's what I would say to today's youth is have a goal, but nobody can give you that. If you're passionate about something, that comes internally. So find that thing that you're excited about. Because if you're excited about it, you're going to put energy into it. The work is not going to feel like work. It's going to feel fun. And you're going to attract other people just by your excitement about it. So that would be my main thought is you have to find that thing that really turns you on. So I don't know. And in terms of the difference between now and then, like I said, I started as an actor, which was a very wobbly field in the first place. So I didn't have a steady foundation. But I think for those that were business-minded, like my brother, he's at Harvard, he's a global executive with Ernst & Young, so he's into business. He knew what he wanted to do in that. He's been doing his job for going on 20 years or maybe 20 years or more. If you are into that, at that time when he got his job, he's 4 years younger than I am. He's a young guy. If you started then, you could say, I'm going to be with this company for 20 years. I'm going to retire from this company. It's not like that today for people in those fields.
I think I'm actually going to have to cut you guys off.
Let me ask one question, though. How does someone know in college what they like? After college?
I think you know, not that you have to be set. Everybody doesn't know. Like, I knew I wanted to be an actor. Everybody doesn't know that. But there is something, and you may not find out about it. You might not discover it within yourself in college, or you may graduate without knowing that. But there is something, at least one thing, for everybody that really gets them excited.
Well, and I think, in college, did I know what was going to excite me at 55 years old? No way. But I knew what excited me in college, and that's what I did. And I've been through 5 or 10 different careers in the meantime, which is okay.
All right, and that is going to conclude our moderated portion of today's forum. We're going to have a brief intermission, and then we're going to open it up to questions. So if you guys start formulating questions, I'm going to kick it over to Dom for mid-forum announcements.
Thank you. We just have a few announcements. First, I'd like to apologize for all the clerical errors that we made. We added together all of Mr. Moore's private equity investments, which is 28, and his company's 14, 42. Little miscommunication there. As Nick said, that we will be having an open question forum from now on. So if you'd start formulating questions, that would be super. Our next forum is this Friday, November 7th. It is about the healthcare delivery from volume to value. If you want any more information about upcoming or past forums, please visit us online at thecityclub.org. First question, if we're ready.
I can start off. How would you say you are different from other innovators, and how have you used those differences to your advantage?
Well, I can say that I'm a lot different from Morris. But you answer the question.
How am I different? I'm different because I'm me. I'm different in the same way each one of you is different. I think it really comes down to just having the confidence in yourself to do what's best for you and to know that that's best for somebody else too.
And I think there's a lot of artisticness here. I think that's so an undisciplined mind perhaps an even a little bit of dyslexic mind. That may help a little bit.
Well, I agree with both of them. And for those of you who have no mental illness, it's okay. You have your, everybody does have their own unique gifts to give to, you know, and I will say, you know, I only recently found out that I have bipolar disorder, but I've had the symptoms for my whole life. And so I just, when I'm in a hypomanic mood, which is just a highly energetic mood, I use it. You know, that's when I can get work. If that means I'm up to 2 o'clock, okay. That's, you know, that's part of who I am. So I use that. And everybody has something, many things that are uniquely you. Use what you have.
Got another question right here.
So thank you very much for everything. It's been a fantastic forum thus far. I guess what I'm wondering is recently Peter Thiel published his book 0 to 1, where he talked about kind of his vision for how startups should be started up in the future. And he said that as an entrepreneur, you should try to start up companies where you can invent a new space or have a monopoly in that space. And he kind of said that going into a competitive space isn't something you should do as an entrepreneur. I'm just wondering if you agreed with that or you disagreed with that, and why.
I think starting a new concept, a new SKU, if you will, is very important. And I think if you solve an unmet need, generally you will. Like on our startups now, 3 of the 4 are patented. So we will have some exclusivity there. So I think there's a lot of accuracy to that. You're starting off, you don't have any money, so you don't, and you want it to be yours. So you've got to come up with something, I think, a solution that works and is unique, and it's fairly focused. It'll be fairly limited, and you'll find it probably, you might be a salesman and you might see something completely unrelated to what you're selling, and you'll say, that's a good idea, I'm going to work on that. My best idea I've ever had in my life occurred while I was at Standard Oil of Ohio, and it was to turn the Standard Oil credit card into a bank card. This was back in the late 60s, and no one had a bank card. We had the lowest bad debt ratio of any card in the any credit card in the United States, and the highest density. And the Standard Oil Company turned the deal down, and I quit. Good idea. No, wasn't able to do it.
Personally, I think it's a matter of scope. Okay, if it is your goal in life to be a billionaire and to start a billion-dollar company, then you need to find a sustainable, protectable monopoly in order to accomplish that. But there are an awful lot of entrepreneurs out there who have started companies that are worth $1 million or $5 million. You do a couple of those, it can add up to real money. That was a joke. You know, you don't have to start a billion-dollar company to be an entrepreneur. You could start entrepreneurs run your local coffee shop. Entrepreneurs run your local hairdresser. Entrepreneurs run companies that are somewhere between that and $1 billion. You don't have to have $1 billion idea to be creative and to be an entrepreneur.
But a patent doesn't have to be $1 billion idea. It could be a $100,000 idea. Like the patent, the way of protecting the floor of a pickup truck. That was not a huge idea, and it went away as soon as they figured out how to paint the floor pan of the car. So these ideas don't have to be big, but they have to be something that someone will buy, will want.
Yes. Yeah, the dog's got to eat the dog food.
I agree, and I'm repeating myself, but I think you just can't. There's no substitute for you really wanting to do something. With that, all kinds of possibilities open up.
We have a question on the left side of the room, in the back.
Hi, I'm Jerry Pusai from Gilmore Academy. What advice would you give for someone who has a good idea or what they would think is a good idea to basically take their idea to the next step and like start a business or whatever they have in mind?
I think the first step is to validate this idea with other people. and to make sure it is, as you say, a good idea. And then the next step, you just have to figure out, it depends on what the idea, it's very idea specific.
Yeah, and with the internet, you can do a lot of research. But I would say you can't strictly, because if I had went to people and said, I want to start a paper in East Cleveland, there are plenty of people who would have told me that was a bad idea. Nobody's going to buy it. East Cleveland all by itself is a bad idea. You know, the list could have gone on and on and on. So I did this because I wanted to do it. And, but I do have I do take feedback all the time from people, but I couldn't rely on other people's opinion about whether I should go forward with the idea, because I knew that this was something that was needed. I knew that.
Validate, validate, validate. No, any of the kind of lean startup kind of people, Eric Ries, Steve Blank, all those guys will tell you the first thing you got to figure out is what's your product market fit. The only way to do there is to get out and talk to potential customers, find out what they want, and give it to them.
We have a question on the right side of the room.
Hey, my name is Jasmine from Horizon Science Academy. My question is for Miss Perry because, I can relate to you. So, do you think it was harder to start your business because of where you came from?
Where? I came from Cleveland. I came to East Cleveland from New York.
Cleveland.
From Cleveland, no. I've never felt that way about anything. And I think, again, I have to go back to my parents, especially my father. He always said, I always felt like if somebody else can do it, I can do it too. So that's the thought that took me forward. I never felt like because I was black or a woman or didn't have a lot of money, I couldn't do something. I always start with, this is what I want to do, how am I going to do it? And doing that has meant that a lot of times I failed. You could look at my acting career and say it was a failure. I say it enables me to, I gained a lot of skills from my acting. When I went around the world because I was an actor. So I don't believe that, no, I do not believe that my background, I believe my background was one of my greatest assets.
Question right here in the left side of the room.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Hi, my name's Omri. I'm from the Washwitz College of Engineering at Cleveland State. My question is kind of, I guess, my biggest worry. So I have my friend here, Titus. He's been trying to convince me to start a company. And we have great ideas all the time. And I'm pretty sure we can execute it pretty well, too, because we're really charismatic. That's okay. But my biggest fear is I want to get my PhD. So I want to go to another engineering school and get my doctorate degree and just go into research or whatever. Because my biggest fear with starting a company is that you have a lot of risk. And any company, regardless of execution or idea or needs, you have a huge financial risk because you're on your own. Yes, you're your own boss, but I mean, the payoff is awesome. But how do you get over that beginning fear of I might fail and then I have to figure something else out? So that's my question.
You got to get over it.
How do you know you're not going to fail as a PhD?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you?
I've been really good at school so far. I don't know. I feel like PhD.
But then you'll become a PhD and then you'll go work for somebody?
No, I mean, I'll get my PhD, I'll do research, which is something that I love to do, and then maybe further on go into industry in the particular field that I've chosen. So there's a sort of safety in the sense that at a certain point I'm going to be the best at whatever field I've chosen to be in. And I can pretty much work in that specific industry, as opposed to if my friend and I go and start a prosthetics company, it could branch off and be awesome, or it could fail and blow up in our faces, and then we're kind of like left to pick up the pieces.
But you can, being a PhD candidate, you can do both to a degree if you have a good partner like the man sitting at the table,
Yeah,
the
he's a
creative man sitting at the table. So you can do both, and I think if you love research, you ought to do research. Don't become an entrepreneur to make money. Do it because there's something burning inside of you that makes you have to do it.
Right. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody. It's risky, and it's scary as heck. And if you came from almost nothing like I did, when you start, you don't have a lot to lose. But let's face it, not knowing where your next paycheck is going to come from is not for everybody. Right. And it's okay if you prefer to know where your paycheck is coming from and want to work for somebody else. There's nothing wrong with that either.
But Morris, it's also scary to work for a big company, and you're there, you're billing your time. You want to go on a vacation? Well, maybe not. You can't do what you want to do. You're not passionate about the project. You can be put on a project you don't like. I mean, there are all sorts of things that I think I can't see. I would never work for a big company.
And you can lose your job. So it is risky. Life is risky. I think what's most important is, if you, like you said, if you like research, do research. But you have to recognize you're going to have failures no matter what you do. That's part of pursuing something. The only people who don't fail are stuck or dead.
Yeah. That's a great line.
I have a question in the back right corner.
Hi, my name is Zulumar from Horizon Science Academy. My question is to Lavora Perry. Can you tell me a little bit can you tell me of your experience with copywriting?
What was the last word?
Copywriting.
Oh, copywriting. I did a little copywriting in American Greetings, which was copywriting is writing advertising copy. Like I wrote advertising copy for ornaments. You know, this is glittery or whatever for Christmas ornaments. And I did a little freelance work doing that. But beyond that, I don't have a lot of, that's not something I pursue very much. Most of my writing has either been creative or nonfiction. I wrote a history book for children. I wrote a book, health book for teenagers. So copywriting's not, I do copywriting as the paper's publisher. You know, I'm always trying to advertise the paper. So yeah.
A question over here to the left.
Hi, I'm Deanne Nowak from Gilmore Academy, and as an educator, I'm interested to know how we can better teach or cultivate creativity, perseverance, and the willingness to take risk.
I would say one thing you can do as an educator is insist that your students get summer jobs other than lifeguarding and caddying. In other words, serious summer jobs where they can begin to have some sort of work experience. And I think otherwise, I think it's kind of interesting to have a sort of a modified case study where you have a group of students representing different sides of a deal or something like that. So you can begin getting people familiar with the business process and the innovation process and the research sort of process.
I'd say, you know, there are a lot of kind of ways to teach about risk. Some of the high school students at Shaker Heights, for example, they started an investment club, and they have an online portfolio where everybody's given, you know, you can learn a little bit about risk by seeing what happens to fake money as opposed to real money. Creativity, I think that's just letting people know it's okay to do something that's different and not trying to put them in the box. How you do that in an educational environment where you're having to spend more and more time teaching the tests, I don't know. But it's definitely important to allow students to think out of the box and to encourage them to think out of the box.
One idea, and I think you may even be doing this at Gilmore, is to have these entrepreneurial clubs, and that sort of it's a little bit like sports, and it ought to be looked at like sports. It's an extracurricular activity. We had a course at university school which I helped teach once, which was you would put the class into 3 sections, and they had to bid on a contract. And the contract had a lot of complications to it, but in bidding on the contract, they understood a lot about marketing and about R&D and about just a whole series of things. And then generally, the person that got the contract got the low grade on the test because it was typically a deal that wasn't that good, and all the students want to make it look good, and most deals look good, but they're not really good, and so it was a good experience.
I'm an HB graduate. I bet at Gilmore you're already having plenty of opportunities for your students to be creative. So I'm not sure why you're asking the question, because I'm sure that you're probably giving those, is it all girls still, or is it, it's co-ed? So, you know, in every subject, there's opportunities to allow students to innovate, to find out what it is that they want to do, and from even math, the things these men are interested in, which are not really my forte. But there's a way to teach those subjects that are creative. I mean, every life is creative. So giving the students opportunities to explore their own interest in line with whatever that subject is.
Question in the middle of the room.
My name is Tiara, and I want to know, like, with being an entrepreneur, it doesn't just depend on yourself. Like, it depends on the people that you're trying to sell your product to. So how will you know if it's good enough, and how will you ever know if it's like people will actually buy it?
That's the number one question. I mean, you always end up doing a lot of market research and asking a lot of people, and in the end, you think you're going to sell 50,000 pairs of these shoes, and you sell 5. So you've hit it squarely on the head, and you just have to somehow figure it out.
And the answer is, you'll know when they hand you a dollar bill. And the trick is to spend as few of your own or your investors' dollar bills to find out if their customer is going to hand you one.
Well, the narrator, and this is the paper, is free. So I don't sell it to people, because East Cleveland is a low-income community, and also people are not buying the plain dealer. So I knew it would be risky to try to get them to buy this paper, but I wanted them to have it. So I offer it free. I sell advertisements, and right now I'm taking donations because I'm under a sponsor that allows those to be tax exempt. So if anybody wants to donate, you can write it off in your taxes. But I know that the readership likes it because I deliver my papers right now. I don't have a staff or anything like that. I pay some freelancers, but mostly it's me. So I know people like it because when I go back to give more papers, they're gone. Or somebody says, oh, let me have one before I even get to put them down. The community has responded overwhelmingly positively to the paper. So that's how I know I'm on the ground.
Question over here, the left side of the room.
Hi, Adam Dunn, MC Squared High School. And I was wondering, kind of going back to Nick's question, if we could maybe have the three of you discuss, for this generation, the importance of things like social entrepreneurship and how the field of entrepreneurship is kind of changing more to deal with kind of the inclement issues that that weren't there maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago, or were, but nobody was really worried about addressing them. There's been a lot of discussion about profit, and there's been a lot of discussion about business ideas, and saving people's lives with trucks is obviously important, and what you're providing, Ms. Perry, is obviously important, and I'm a big music fan, so I love that. But maybe if you could bring it back to this generation and their, the ability for entrepreneurship to have a greater impact on people's lives.
Well, that's the whole impact on people's lives is why I started the paper. Our city, when people constantly tell you that your city's dirty, your city's crime-ridden, your city's, I've lived in East Cleveland for 22 years, and these messages is all I heard about us. And then I would hear them coming out of East Clevelanders themselves. I can't wait to get out of East Cleveland, or East Cleveland, whatever. And I really felt like, in terms of that social piece, there was we as citizens needed to see the beauty of our city. So I started the paper for a social reason, because we had no voice to say this is what East Cleveland is organically from us. So I feel very, like I said, the response has been overwhelmingly positive. I see an uplifting in our community because of the paper. And that's a bold statement to make because I produced the paper, but I see a change. People are prouder as a result of the paper, of being from East Cleveland.
I think it's a very important subject you brought up. And I think if you on one scale, you can look at public entities like the Metro Park. If you go on the Metro Park webpage, there's an enormous amount of material there that is being provided by some very creative web designers and documenting all the things that go on there. But I think the other thing that's important is we don't really spend a lot of time. I think our social situation, our nonprofits, are nowhere near as far along as they should be. And even the universities aren't, I mean, we don't use e-learning to the extent that we could potentially use it. We're getting there, but I think you've hit on a very important point.
So I think, well, I'm going to make a couple points here. You cannot become an entrepreneur because you want to make money. If you want to make money, get a job that has some security to it and collect a paycheck. If you talk to any of the greatest entrepreneurs of our time, almost to a person, they're going to tell you they did it because they wanted to change the world. Mark Zuckerberg, as trite as it sounds, turned down $1 billion for his company because he wanted to change the world. The guy that started WhatsApp because his parents were from a part of the world where they could not communicate freely, and he felt that it was really important to provide a way for people to communicate freely where the government couldn't shut them down. And, you know, again, it's a trite and it's a cliche, but if you want to be an entrepreneur, do it because you want to make the world a better place to live. I mean, you know, when I went into the music distribution business, I wanted to save the world from top 40. You know, I wanted to be able to provide a way for electronic music and dance music and alternative to get to a wider audience, and frankly, for people like me to find the music I liked, and I'm not without having to listen to the radio.
Yeah, a question on the right-hand side of the room.
Okay, I'm Monique. I'm from Beaumont. And I had a question about what majors would you suggest considering when going to college? Like, what will benefit you the most?
I think you should major in what you like, and you'll be doing something entirely different. But liberal arts is great. That prepares you for anything and for nothing.
I agree. What he said.
Yeah. Well,
all right, that is going to conclude today's forum. We're going to hand it over to Dom for our closing announcements.
Yes, thank you. Today at the City Club, we have been enjoying a youth forum panel discussion about innovation featuring Lavora Perry, Morris Wheeler, and Dan Moore. We hope that you all join us for our next forum on December 10th about the Cleveland Renaissance. Thank you, and the forum is now adjourned.